Patrick, well, welcome and thank you for agreeing to help co-host this webinar.
You're very welcome, Vance. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about what we do a little bit and give people an opportunity to get residency down in this part of the world that you and I both love.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure people are trickling in terms of listeners, but we're going to go ahead and kind of get started with the introduction so we can get to the meat and potatoes as soon as possible. Again, my name is Vance from My Latin Life, podcast, blog, Twitter, etc. So thanks everyone for joining. And Patrick has agreed to help co-host this webinar specifically for the My Latin Life audience. So everyone that's listening is in a small insider group of people that are getting that insider knowledge. So we thank the followers. And Patrick's a really good guy. He's been around a long time in terms of doing this. I mean, he'll tell you more about his background, but you know, he's been in Latin America for 15 years plus, owning land and everything. He's been doing a lot in terms of real estate all over Latin America, and he's worked with other people that are pretty well known. So Patrick's got definitely a really good reputation. Originally Canadian guy. Patrick and I also met in Panama recently. We had a nice lunch, etc. So that's why I said, Patrick, let's run this webinar and let's talk about Nicaragua residency and the investment opportunity, because I think the Nicaragua investment program is honestly a very good program, especially for North Americans. And really the question is just, there's questions a bit around the program and the nuances, but overall it's a great program. And then the question is just which investment vehicle is the right vehicle because you got to invest in something to get residency. And I think what Patrick is presenting today is a very, very valid option in order to continue to proceed with Nicaragua residency. So that's definitely an angle of it. But yeah, Patrick, feel free to take it from here and jump into the presentation that you have planned for us. And thanks again for your time.
No problem. Thanks again, Vance. I apologize for our little boat trip earlier this week where we had some engine problems, but I think we figured out what the issue is, so it was worthwhile doing. So hopefully everybody can see the screen that I'm sharing here. Our presentation that we're going to do today is a little bit long, but I'll try to go through it pretty quickly. We are recording this, so you have the opportunity to replay the recording that we'll send out to you, Vance will send out to you, and it'll allow you to see a little more detail. And of course, if you see the email address at the bottom of the screen there, my Latin Life at EcoVillages-life.com. It's a bit long, but again, you can see it on the screen, and we'll put it in the comments section when we post the video as well. So we're going to get started here. Hopefully, Vance, everybody can hear me okay? You don't have any issues with the sound?
I can definitely hear you okay. And I guess I would mention, probably a good time to mention that you guys, I think, can put questions in the Q&A in the chat. And then at the end of the presentation, we're going to go over a Q&A with all your guys' questions. And Patrick and myself will help answer Q&A questions. So I think that'll be a fun part of it as well.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. It's always great when we're doing these live and get some questions in there. The Q&A button should be on your screen if you're not familiar with Zoom webinars. Sometimes it's at the top, sometimes on the side, sometimes on the bottom, but you should be able to find it somewhere. And we'll, like Vance said, we'll look at that at the end and answer all the questions that we can. So who am I? My name is Patrick Hebert. I am Canadian. I've been living down in Latin America, Central America, South America for a couple of decades. I've been a resident of, actually Nicaragua was my first residency. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. And I'm a resident in a few other countries down here as well. I'm one of the founders of EcoVillages. We create communities, kind of freedom and sustainability oriented communities in this region, from Belize, Honduras, design community in Salvador, several in Nicaragua, and this afternoon I just got back from one that we're starting here in Panama. I'm in Panama City right now, and we're doing a lot of things all over the region with EcoVillages, and also the founder of Vida Verde Agro-Forestry, which is the kind of the ticket to residency in Nicaragua right now, and that's what we're going to talk about a lot today, and a mix. We have an interesting presentation for you today. Andrea was going to join us today, but she's in Ecuador as we speak, and they're having a storm right now, and her internet got knocked out. So bear with me. She's much more interesting to listen to than me, but you're going to have to, live with just myself today and Vance's comments at the end too. But I'll try to make it as interesting as possible for you. And next time we'll hope Andrea can make it. So today you're going to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly about Nicaragua. Nicaragua is the country that we're going to talk about today. Sometimes people go, Nicaragua, why would I want to go there? And I think by the end of the presentation, you'll know why. So we're going to explore residency, relocation, ownership questions as it relates to Nicaragua, and also learn about a potential home combination option that you can have, both the agroforestry for your residency and a home for a landing pad if you want to have that. So where is Nicaragua? It's kind of right in the center of Central America, just above Costa Rica, very similar in kind of the layout or not in the nature to Costa Rica. A little bit drier than Costa Rica. Costa Rica is quite lush, but they get more rain. Nicaragua has a lot more volcanoes and lakes and things, but otherwise very similar in terms of weather to Costa Rica. So why Nicaragua? Well, I don't really pull any punches about this. I'm somewhat of a libertarian. I do believe in kind of do no harm and living in a more freedom-oriented kind of way. I wasn't crazy about the way most governments handled COVID, and I was glad that I was a Nicaraguan resident at the time, because in Nicaragua, they didn't do any mask mandates. They didn't require vaccines. They didn't lock down their economy. They didn't force anybody to stay at home. It was just normal. And surprise, surprise, they didn't have any more issues with COVID than any other country. And so a lot of people appreciate that. Now, however you feel about that is, individual feelings. That's my feelings on it. But a lot of people really, really appreciated that. And because of that, Nicaragua became much more of a country for the people, expats were migrating to, or at very least getting the residency, getting the residency so they had that plan B in place. So I highly recommend it. I have residencies in a few countries down here. Nicaragua was my first and still one of my favorite for sure because of this. I mean, I didn't know how they were going to handle these sorts of situations when I got my residency long before COVID. And, I wanted to get out of Canada because of high taxation and things like that. So, and the climate, but I was lucky because Nicaragua turned out to be the place that I really appreciated. You could have a normal life. You could go visit your friends. You could go to the grocery store. You could go to restaurants and not have to wear a mask and those sorts of things. So now there was some businesses that, forced you to wear a mask, but it was not government imposed and it was your choice. If you don't want to wear a mask, you wouldn't go to the grocery store that asked you to. So to me, that's perfectly a good compromise. And I like the way they handled it. So the proof was in the pudding. Nicaragua showed that they're kind of very freedom oriented, despite what you might hear on mainstream media these days about the countries down here. So we'll talk a little bit about investment opportunity, the residency, how good the healthcare is, all the positives and negatives and things, and you'll learn a little bit about Nicaragua tonight. So quality of life, cost of living is always high on the quality of life. You can hire a full-time maid or chef for under $400 a month, and that's typical type of wage. So you can really live well, and you don't have to feel bad about that. You're giving somebody a job. They're very happy for it. But there's just a few comparisons. The other day I went online and went and checked out what things cost in the US and Canada, and it's been a while since I've really shopped there, so I had to go look it up. But a few of the prices surprised me. But you can see the difference, pretty typical things. Obviously, we'll talk about the medical system as well, but obviously the doctor visits is one of the doctor visits, and medication and everything to do with healthcare is radically less expensive. So the elephant in the room with Nicaragua and Honduras and these countries down here is always, is it safe? Though I heard so many nasty things about Nicaragua. Well, what you've heard and reality are probably radically polar opposites. The reality is the statistics show that Nicaragua is one of the safest countries in all the Americas, generally next to Canada. And Canada's changing not for the better either. So Nicaragua is held its position really well as a very safe country. You can see on the cost of living we just talked about is partly due because the perception that Nicaragua is not safe. So people, don't tend to move there. Now that changed with COVID. The residency immigration is overwhelmed with the number of people coming in from different countries to live in Nicaragua. And, they're seeing the reality of it and how great a place it is to live and how safe it is, how inexpensive it is. And, I've heard statistics of up to 30 times or 3,000% increase in the immigration from expats into Nicaragua during and after COVID. So we're seeing that too. We have communities there and we're seeing how popular they are now, how, we're building homes for a lot of Canadians and Americans, people from the Netherlands that haven't been crazy about how their government handled things, a lot of people from Australia. So different parts around the world, it's becoming more popular. And one of the telltale signs, I think, about the safety of Nicaragua too, is on that graph on the right, is the crime and theft is a major problem for doing business. Now, this is a survey of business owners and how they felt about whether crime in their country affected their ability to do business. And you'll see that, the United States is kind of in the middle, not nearly as high as some or as bad as some. Some of the other countries like Costa Rica is a little easier to do business and not affected by crime. Canada's, right at the bottom, as you'd expect, a pretty safe place to do business. Surprisingly, Nicaragua was considered by business owners safer than Canada and never impacted. In fact, it basically didn't register because people just business owners didn't think that there was any issue with, people breaking into their stores or whatever crime affecting their business. I think I put that stat on here because I think that's a pretty good, a telltale sign of what it's really like. Now, housing cost comparison, I tried to get as close to something that you would have in Nicaragua. So it's basically in a beach home in San Diego in the red on the right. It's about $800,000 for a little studio unit, 400 and some square feet, 25 years old. And the HOAs shocked me. I guess I have been out of touch with what, the homeowner association fees can be like in, Southern California, especially. And it was over $1,000 a month. One of the homes that we'll look at today is actually one of the ones here, in the green, a little bigger, but still a tiny home. It's 2-bedroom, 1 bath, brand new construction, $168 per month in the homeowner fees, and inside a resort, gated resort with golf course and everything like that. And it's $169,000. So you can see a pretty, 380% difference in price for basically a home near the beach in a tropical environment. So the climate in Nicaragua is a little different on the Caribbean side than on the Pacific. We tend to focus on the Pacific side. That's where our communities are located. It's warm all year round. You don't have cold times ever. You really have 2 different seasons. It's not spring, summer, winter, or spring, summer, autumn, and winter. You have dry and what we call the green season, when it rains a little bit more. The dry season is really pronounced between December and April. This time of year, it's right at the end of the dry season. So, the locals will tell you May 15th at noon is when the rains will start. And that's actually pretty accurate. It's that exact. But so the May to November timeframe is the greener season, which I actually almost like better. It's very lush, everything's really green. And but the rains typically fall at night or for kind of a burst at 20 to 30 minutes around noon, and then it clears up and you've got a beautiful day again, and very comfortable. I spent a lot of my life in Vancouver Island, so just north of Seattle, same kind of weather as Seattle. And you can have 3 weeks without seeing, the sun. So it's not like that. It's not that kind of rainy season. These are tropical rains that happen quickly. And I like both seasons. We used to have a hotel at the community that we're going to talk about here. And people would say, oh, last year I went to Hawaii and it rained the whole time. And it really kind of was disappointing for my only couple of weeks of holidays I get every year. And we used to say, well, if you come between December and April to this hotel in Nicaragua, this resort, I'll give you your money back if it rains, because it just never rains that time of year. So it's dry and it gets a bit brown, but you're right beside the ocean and the beaches are great. So it's really nice. On the Caribbean coast, like I said, we don't really have anything there, but there is the Corn Islands, and they're really beautiful, right with surrounded by the reef and beautiful diving and everything. Was a short flight away. It's a little bit cooler, not much, but it doesn't really have a dry season. It can rain at any time on the Caribbean side. So I have some fun facts thrown in here. Central America's largest lake is Lake Nicaragua, and it has the largest island in the world, lake island in the world, Isla de Ometepe, which is beautiful if you ever get to go there. It's a really cool. It's two volcanoes that created an island in the middle of the lake, and really almost has its own unique kind of culture because they were kind of separated from the rest of the country. So it's a very cool spot to visit. So healthcare, I mean, I can't say enough about the healthcare in Nicaragua, especially one of the main hospitals, the Vivian Palace Hospital in Managua. I had kidney stones at a little fishing village in Nicaragua, way out of the city, and it was not comfortable, as you can imagine. And I was lucky enough to get a hold of a doctor. It was a Saturday night. He was at a party and he didn't mind. He took the call and ended up saying, okay, here, do this, this, and this, and I'll see you first thing in the morning, or if you want me to come out there. He was willing to leave the party to come and see me, and I said, I'll make it through the night. And so in the morning, I went to see him, and he is a urologist, and he did all his tests, like blood tests and ultrasounds and all those sorts of things. And he said, well, if you want a second opinion, there's another urologist here in the clinic. And so he took me to him and went through the same thing, got all the tests and everything. And then, it was pretty cool because at least in Canada, where I was from, the ultrasounds, you could never see anything, right? They wouldn't show you anything. It's like, no, we'll get back to your doctor, and your doctor will tell you what we saw. Well, here they take the big screen TV and they turn it down towards, and it's like, oh, your spleen is okay, your liver looks fine. Here's the kidney stone that's bothering you. It's big, but it's a size that you can get rid of with medication. So it was, he takes me across the street to the pharmacy and said, well, I'm going to go with you because your Spanish sucks, and I want to make sure you get the right medication. And so all that, combined was, I think it was $58, right? All the tests and everything, and the specialists, 2 of them, and getting the medication and everything. So it's extremely inexpensive. I had kidney stones in my other kidney a couple of years later in Canada, and that was one of the worst experiences of my life. So I know Canadian healthcare can be great. It can also not be. So if I get kidney stones again, I know I'm going back to Nicaragua, even if I'm not there at the time. So the pharmacies are good too. You can buy anything you want without prescription except narcotics. So if you have, heart medication that you want to get or whatever, you can just go to the pharmacy and get it directly. And it's a lot less expensive. Another tidbit of comparison to Canada, I have high blood pressure, and my medication in Canada was actually made in a city in Canada. And it would cost me $90 for a month's worth of the pills. Got down to Nicaragua. I found that exact same medication still made in Canada, but shipped to Nicaragua, and it cost $2 for a month. So from 90 down to 2, even adding in the middlemen, the transportation, and all that. So you get to see how much medication is taxed in Canada in that case. And it's just so much less expensive for medication and doctor visits. And you can get insurance at some of the hospitals and clinics as well. My wife and I have health insurance because we travel a lot, and we want to make sure we had kind of global health insurance, but you can get specific health insurance that's very inexpensive if you are going to be in Nicaragua all the time and just want it for there. Excuse me, I got a frog in my throat. So I won't spend too much time on this. I want to keep moving pretty quickly. Dentists, a lot more are great too. My daughter and my sister have both come down to Nicaragua to get dental work, and I've had dental work. I had to get a crown replaced that wasn't done correctly in the US, and had it redone in Nicaragua and Managua. And my sister's work, I think she wanted a lot of crowns done and root canals and things like that. So it was, in Canada, it was going to be over $30,000. And in Nicaragua, she got it done for around $3,000, and was all fine. She's got great teeth now, and she had some money left over, obviously, to do a lot of other things with. So it was definitely worth it. So another fact is Granada, one of the prettiest cities, I think, in Latin America, is the oldest city in the Americas. Right on Lake Nicaragua, was built before any of the other cities in the whole continent, and was kind of a place where they protected the country against the pirates of the Caribbean, because the lake is connected to the Caribbean Ocean through a river, and so it has some really cool history there. So for schools, for people that would be interested in actually spending a lot of time in Nicaragua or moving there, there's public schools. They're not the greatest quality. To be just blunt, that would be one of the, the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's probably not, that's one of the bads. The public schools are not great. But they do have private schools. They're very, good quality, generally bilingual. Some of them are religious. Some bilingual can be English, but it can also be French or German. There's different language schools. The international schools are great for expats, just because once you graduate from there, you can go on to attend university or college in anywhere in the world. Homeschooling is done a lot. People like to homeschool their kids in Nicaragua, but usually do a kind of hybrid, a mix of get their kids socialized either in the public schools or the private schools, but do some homeschooling as well. The food, I'll be honest, I wouldn't move to Nicaragua for the food. It's pretty cool in different ways, but there's other places in the world that have much more orientation towards their food. But there are some really good restaurants in Granada. León is another really cool city. Managua. Managua is not a very pretty city, I'll be honest. They have the international airport there, but Granada and León, Chinandega, those are really nice cities with great food. There's everything from the high-end restaurants, like it says, to the hole-in-the-wall eateries and local markets. My wife and I, Andrea, like to go to shop in the local markets because A, it's really inexpensive, and B, it's a lot more interesting to shop there and get a lot more fresher kind of organic food. I remember last time we went to one of the markets to get groceries, we filled up, those burlap sacks that are, kind of come up to your hip. We filled up one of those with everything like carrots, potatoes, papaya, bananas, all sorts of things. And it was under $5. I can't remember exactly the price, but it was weeks worth of vegetables and fruit for us. And obviously the meat is inexpensive as well. You can pay, North American prices if you go to the North American like grocery stores. All the cities have. They have the Costco's and things like that as well. Well, they call it Price Mart down here, but they're the same store. But if you like entertainment, shopping in the markets is good for that, and you also get much fresher food direct from the farmers or the gardeners, and it's generally way less expensive. So that would be my 2 cents worth for shopping. So at EcoVillages, we do these compatibility scales or expat scales on what we think how they would rate the country, and Nicaragua rates very high at 95 out of 100, and it's kind of a weighted balance of the different things. It's weaker, not weak, but weaker on ease of access. Right now, there's COVID kind of affected that too. There used to be more flights into Managua from different places, but they got canceled or postponed because of COVID. The ease of access, we gave it an 85 because you can get there from Miami, Atlanta, Houston. I think LA is starting up their flights again. So from the US, it's pretty easy. There are no direct flights from Canada, or I don't think from Europe right now either. So you're generally connecting through Houston or Miami is what's typical. It's very foreigner friendly. People are extremely friendly. I mean, my kids were in their early teens and or had just got their driver's license, and I have 2 daughters and a son, and they would drive around Nicaragua, and if they get a flat tire, people would just kind of pour out of the woodwork and help them change it. And I never had any concerns about their safety. Very, the local people really look after, the expats. Governance and taxes, we ranked at 92. The important thing to remember on taxes in these countries, most of these countries, certainly down here in Nicaragua is one of those, is that they're jurisdictional tax bases. So if you live in Nicaragua as a resident, but you earn your income from outside the country, and say you're an architect or something and you're doing your work at home, you're doing it for an American or a Canadian or Australian company or something, that's not taxable income. So for me, it was important. That was important because when I left Canada, in Canada, your taxation is connected to your residency and not your citizenship. That's not the case in the US, and not all other countries either. But with being able to leave Canada, for me, I could let go of my residency in Canada. So I'm not paying taxes in Canada anymore, but I still have the passport. So it's easy to travel anywhere. And because the work I do, have companies there that do work that isn't based in Nicaragua. They don't have to pay taxes on that either. We do have a restaurant in Nicaragua, and it does have to pay Nicaraguan taxes because it's located there and it's selling to local people. So that's kind of how the taxes work. I'm not a tax consultant, but for anybody, and if you want, you can ask questions and we'll answer the ones we know, but we might put you on to lawyers for tax consultants for the details that pertain specifically to you. Safety, as we talked about, is really high. Residency, we're going to talk a little bit more about. It's also very good. It is, as far as I know, it's the least expensive residency in the Americas right now. Lots of things to do and see. Banking is pretty good. It's it's good. It's solid. It's just that it's not easy to open a bank account in pretty much any Latin American country. They're always a lot of hoops to jump through to get an account open. That's a bit of a pain, but climate is great. Healthcare, we talked about, is great. And investment appreciation potential, I think, is really good because countries like Costa Rica, for instance, I love Costa Rica. I'm not at all saying anything bad about it, but they've ridden their wave to some extent already. It started getting popular. They did a great job of marketing their tourism in Costa Rica, and they started getting popular in the 70s and 80s, certainly the 90s and early millennial times. So they've kind of plateaued in cost to some extent, although they're getting a bit of a boost right now too, because they're seeing a lot of expats move there as well. But because of the perceived, politics and the safety of Nicaragua, it didn't have that boost. And frankly, Nicaragua did a terrible job of promoting themselves as a great place to vacation. So it hasn't had that yet, but we're seeing that now. And I've been lucky enough to have bought property there a number of years ago and had great capital gains on it. So I really do think of Nicaragua as, on the scale, it's kind of a good time to buy right now. One more fact here. I think we have only a couple of them left, but this is one of the volcanoes, and it's near Managua, between Managua and Grenada. It's called the Messiah volcano. It's become active in the last few years, and it's very cool because it's one of the few places on Earth that you can drive your car right up to the edge of the volcano and look into it. That's a picture, obviously, of me standing above the cauldron there. It's very cool. It even has its own species of bird, type of parrot, that lives in there. That's the only place in the world that it lives. It's evolved to be able to live inside the volcano. But I find it kind of funny because they tell you to back your car up to the edge so that you can get away quickly if it's going to blow. It's like, I think if it's going to blow, it doesn't matter what direction your car is facing. It's not going to be a good thing. But if you're brave, you can go and see it. Hundreds of thousands of people, I guess, see it every year. So it's so far so good. So what we're going to talk a little bit today is the Vita Verde Agro-Forest and your ability to buy a parcel of Agro-Forestry and use that as your investment into the country for a second residency. So let me just step back for 1 second and explain residency a little bit and why they're available in these countries. So a country like Nicaragua, they want to attract investment into the country, obviously, to promote growth in the country and in their economic growth and in jobs, in the labor force. So they're looking for ways to bring money from outside the country into the country. And one of the ways to do that is to offer residencies. Now, they offer different types of residencies. They offer a renter's residency, which means you basically just have to stay in the country and rent. You have to prove that you make a certain amount of income. They offer a pensioner's residency, similar thing, that you're getting a certain level of pension. And that covers your ability to spend money in the country, basically. And that's the whole reason that the countries offer this, is that there's a way to bring money into the country. Now, immigration in the countries typically aren't as fond of the renters or the pension residency programs because they don't bring as much money and they generally don't create a lot of jobs. So they used to allow, if you bought a home in the country, well, one quick sidestep there. When Nicaragua over the last few years has started to become more and more popular as a vacation destination, they didn't have enough accommodations for everybody. So there was a shortage of accommodations, shortage of rental homes, hotel rooms, all that sort of thing. So they did allow people to buy a home and rent it out and use that as their investment residency application now, or investment. They've since in the last year, they've changed that. They dropped that. They don't allow it anymore. And the reason for that is people would buy the home and then move to Nicaragua and live in it. So that didn't really help their accommodations problem at all and boost the number of places for people to stay. So they eliminated that. And the reason I want to point that out is a lot of people still believe, well, I could just buy a home there and I'll use that as my residency investment. And unfortunately, a lot of companies out there are telling people that that's still something you can do, but it's just not true. And the reason that changed again is that because people were using them for their own home and it didn't fix the problem. It didn't create more jobs. It didn't fix the accommodations problem. So that's kind of the background on this. Now, one of the things they do allow you to invest in, Nicaragua has some of the most, nature reserves in the region, and they're big on reforestation. So one of the things that they do allow you to invest in is a reforestation area, and our agroforest falls into that category. So when we are a certified reforestation property, and when you buy a parcel on the farm, it takes a little time, but we transfer that reforestation certification from the major farm into your parcel. So this is kind of the background on what we're offering. It allows you to use a parcel of a teak and avocado farm to apply for residency at a very low cost compared to a lot of the other countries. So I kind of explained this part a bit already, I guess, but yeah, we'll keep moving through a little bit quicker. So just what is an agroforest? Well, it's kind of like it sounds, a combination of agriculture and forest. It's basically taking a hint from nature. You don't find in nature, you go into a jungle or a forest, there's hundreds of different species of plants living kind of in harmony. And you don't see that, monoculture like you do in a wheat farm in, the Midwest or Canada or Netherlands or wherever. And you'll see, that's just not a natural way of doing things. And that's really hard on the soil. They're a shallow rooted plant. They just suck all the nutrients out of the topsoil. You end up having to fertilize and all that sort of thing. So what we wanted to do, this property, when I bought it a couple decades ago, this property used to be a peanut farm, and we changed it to a teak and avocado farm because the peanuts were basically doing the same thing to the soil as any other monoculture does. So what happens with teak, it's a huge tree. It grows in 20 years, very, very tall, and it has deep roots. So it brings nutrients from the deep part of the soil up to the plant and up to the leaves. The leaves fall off, replenish, and the cycle starts again. The avocado is a mid-sized tree with the mid-level roots. And then we're looking at adding stevia once the canopy of the forest, produces more shade. And stevia is a sugar replacement with 0 calories, becoming very popular in health food areas. And that will grow well underneath there once the shade is available. So it also is good because for economic reasons, teak takes a long time to grow. It takes 20 to 25 years to really pay off. But on avocado, from the day you plant it, it's usually about 4 years till it starts producing well. And then by 6 years, it's really, hit its stride and producing well. And it also is a lucrative crop. So rather, a lot of people buy into teak farms, and that's great, except that you're waiting a long time for your payback. So the nice thing about adding the avocado is you're not waiting you're waiting a few years, but you're not waiting forever for your payback. And so you have a great cash flow. And we do have some ROI sheets. I won't go into too much to save time here, but they're on this presentation. They're also in a brochure that we have, and using that email that I mentioned at the top, and we'll have it at the bottom again. You can ask about for a brochure. It has a lot more details. So where is the agroforest? It's in the northwest corner of Nicaragua, overlooking what's called the Gulf of Fonseca and beside the Coseguina volcano. Very, very beautiful area. The beach right in front of the forest is spectacular for swimming and everything as well. And one of the reasons we, chose that area is it's also the perfect climate for teak. Teak needs a dry season and a wet season. And like I was explaining the climate before, Nicaragua has that in spades, right? So it's very pronounced dry season and very pronounced wet season. And so during the wet season, the teak grows like crazy and, gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then in the dry season, it becomes a bit dormant. But what that makes for, the value of the wood is coming from the dry season because it makes the wood harder. And if you know anything about teak, it's used in, in boating, yachts and musical instruments and different things like that. Very, very high value wood. And, it needs to have that dry season as part of it. If it grows if it grows in too wet of an area, it'll grow big and it will enjoy it. It just won't be quality wood. And then when you do harvest the wood, they measure the quality of the wood and obviously the distance between the rings in the tree and everything kind of tell the buyers that, this is a very high quality or not so high quality wood. So the teak grown in this area is going to be good quality, high quality, because it has that dry season as well as the wet season. So as I mentioned earlier, there's new rules about what you can invest in. You can invest in reforestation. You can invest in tourism business. For instance, if you bought a hotel or something like that, that would apply because you couldn't live in every room in the hotel. So that immigration understands that you're actually doing a tourism thing that will help their accommodations crisis. But you can't use a home purchase anymore as qualifying for investor residency. So I'll leave this slide up here for a minute. When you go back to the recording, if you're interested, you can see, a lot of the stats on where, your investment comes out to be anticipated. We can't guarantee that, but, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. This is some of the details. Again, these ROI sheets and things and information are all in the brochure with a lot of detail. You can see, what the teak is expected to produce over the, the next 20, 25 years and what the avocado would produce over that time frame, and your ROI from that. So we backing up a little bit, I started this farm years ago, and it was really for my family's benefit. I thought, well, it's something good for the family, for my kids in the future too. They can just keep harvesting and replanting and away they go. And then when Nicaragua changed their rules about not allowing people to buy homes to invest in or get the residency through, I had a lot of people ask me, well, what can we do? And that's when we realized that the reforestation plan would work out well. So we divided our farm into half-acre parcels, and we were already caring for the farm. So if you're interested in buying a parcel or two or whatever, we charge $27 a month to take care of it. And that takes care of the irrigation. I have all the irrigation systems in there. I have the wells on site that you have to water. You have to keep the plants alive, especially the avocado during the dry season. And so in a month or so, the rains will start again, but then they grow so fast, you have to keep pruning them. You have to keep the forest floor clean. The teak especially have to be pruned so they grow straight. And if they're not taken care of, they grow into, branch out and they grow into poor trees that are not worth anything for their wood later. So we've managed to get it down to a very low cost because it was a sunk cost for us. Everything's already there operating the farm. And this, the $27 just helps go towards maintaining it. So, I mean, it's also not mandatory. If you want to just have a half-acre farm and not have it maintained, I tell you the trees aren't going to be worth much very soon, but you can still use it to apply for your residency. And one of the other things that we do, I think that I don't know if anybody else doing right now in their teak farms or avocado farms or combination farms like we have, is to have insurance. Basically, and there is always a possibility. Now, teak is extremely tough. At about 4 years old, 3 to 5 years old range, it's very fire retardant. It's it doesn't really get termites. One of the beauties of it is it's a really hard wood, so the termites don't really like it. It's hard to burn, and all those things. So it's pretty self-protecting after 4 or 5 years, but in the early years, it's still pretty sensitive. So, you know, we have a insurance program that if something happened to the trees, and we actually did have a storm move through a few months ago, and we did have to replace a few trees, not much, but a few. And, you know, for $38 a month, we just guarantee that, you know, as long as you're paying the $38, doesn't matter what happens to your trees, we'll go back and, you know, if some random herd of cattle or something came in and ate all the avocado trees, I mean, we had fenced and it's not likely to happen, but we would replant them. And, you know, they'd be starting younger again, but they would be there and they'd be growing again. So a lot of people choose to do this for the peace of mind. So if you combine the two, it's about $65 per month for maintenance and insurance, which I think is very reasonable to own your own farm that's going to pay off, you know, lucratively in the future. So we made the price of, we kind of looked at all the costs that we had and everything, and didn't want to make it exorbitant price, but we decided that $44,000 is the cost of for one parcel, 1/2 acre farm parcel. It's already got all the trees on it. The trees are anywhere between a year and about 2.5 years old right now that are on there. So you've got a bit of a head start. There's only 8 parcels left. We had 54 parcels sold, I believe 46 now. I might have sold one today, so 47 maybe. But there's 7 or 8 parcels left, so it's not a lot left. So if you are interested, I do recommend, you know, contacting us pretty soon. And you know, we also, if you pay for the $44,000 in one payment, we do have some financing. So if you do want to finance it, you can ask us about that. But if you pay for it up front, we'll include the cost of the application for residency, which is the legal fees and the forms and everything that from the government. And that's usually about $2,800 to $4,000 cost to apply for residency. You know, the lawyer's fees and everything. So if you pay the $44,000 up front, we include that. If you want to finance it, we do have some financing programs, but then you're responsible for paying for the legal fees yourself. Now, that's the standard price. What I'm going to talk about now, I'll try to move through it pretty quickly to keep this going, but we have a community called Playa Pacifica, right? In Nicaragua, very close to Managua. It's the closest beach community to Managua, to the international airport. And we're very proud of it. It's very new, but it's inside a community that's got lots of people already, expats already living in it. And we've decided to make a combination because sometimes when people want to buy a Plan B residency, like we just talked about with Agro-Forestry, that's great, except if something does happen and they do want to leave and permanently, or at least for some period of years or months, or at least live in Nicaragua, they need a place to go to. And so we have a community where a lot of people are investing in the homes either to live in or to rent for now. They have a good ROI, and to rent now and have their kind of in their back pocket later if they want to use it, or use it for vacations every year or whatever. It's a beautiful spot. So it's called Playa Pacifica. It's located inside a much larger gated community called Grand Pacifica, where there are a lot of different neighborhoods, and there's a number of homes, several hundred, probably 300 homes, people living in the community. Some full time, some are snowbirds, some bought their homes to rent out, so they have usually long-term resident or long-term tenants in it. So there's a real expat and local people community already there, and I'll drill it. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but Playa Pacifica is right here. And that's the part we're promoting today. We love it because it's a very cool community with all the features that we put in at EcoVillages, but also that its location, it's right near the main restaurant, infinity pools and different things. So this is the Playa Pacifica community. You can see the check boxes and reserved ones are already sold. We've just been kind of releasing it recently. There's bigger homes along the waterfront, but these are all tiny homes up on the top that kind of hook the U there. But even these are like very close to the water. And then there's mid-sized homes on the next row back here and a few more tiny homes at the back. There'll be a clubhouse area with a restaurant as well, and a pool, and then another little pool near the water with a palapa and a little bar and things like that. So very cool area. It's all Spanish colonial design. So we wanted to kind of mix modern and Spanish colonial together. So you'll see the home designs are very Spanish colonial rancher style, but then it's got some modern features. Like if you have an electric golf cart, instead of a hitching post for a horse, the hitching post has an outlet in it that you can plug your golf cart into. So different little features like that. So this is phase one. As you can see, a number of phase one is already reserved or purchased. There are some really great spots left, and of 3 different models of homes, and I'm going to go through those really quickly. Everything we do at EcoVillages. Now, I'll just explain EcoVillages for a second. My son and I lived on a boat and sailed around for a long time, and we learned to be kind of self-sustaining. And with a boat out on the water, you don't have a long extension cord, so you're going to produce your own power. You're going to produce your own potable water, fresh water out of salt water, and that sort of thing. So we really enjoyed it. We always liked, I always use example, like we'd go pick sea asparagus, which is a pretty cool asparagus that grows in the ocean, and oysters and that, and catch fish and everything, and live as much as we could off of the ocean and the land and the islands around it. And we had a stash of pork and beans in cans, so if we didn't find something that day, we could make it. But our goal was always to be sustainable as possible. It's just kind of a challenge, and that was like a couple decades ago. And then we really wanted to bring that to land, so that's what we've done with EcoVillages. I don't like paying power bills and that sort of thing, so I'm really into the solar systems or wind powered systems. And so every one of the EcoVillages homes has at least a kind of a starter solar system that you can, if you want to be totally off the grid, you can expand it. Or if you want to do the hybrid grid tie systems like we have. In this case, the Playa Pacifica homes will have both the solar system and tied to the regular power grid. But if you're smart, your bills can be virtually zero because you're using the solar system smartly. So I'm going to go through some of the home models here pretty quickly. The Galician, this is a very small, tiny home, but it's very cool. Again, you can be right on the beach. It's a spectacular beach, but by the way, it's like 3 or 4 miles of sand that almost nobody is on. And, great for surfing. If you're a surfer, it's one of the best surf breaks. It's got 2 different ones. It's got a sand break for sort of beginners and moderate surfers, and then it's got a reef break that's definitely for experts, and get people from, famous surfers from all over the world that show up here. But it's also got some, good natural kind of breakwaters for swimming areas. And one of those is right here in front of Playa Pacifica. So great place to swim. So the normal home price for this home is $159,900. These are in US dollars. But if you combine it with the Agro-Forest, which would give you the Agro-Forest for applying for residency and a home to rent out to, or have as a landing pad or living permanently, or whatever, or vacation, whatever you want to do with it, we'll combine them too, and you can get that for, in this case, $179,900. There is also a furniture package, and I'm not sure I have the details of it here, but again, it's in the brochure. Ask us for the brochure. It's got a lot more details to it. This is the floor plan. It is a tiny home. One of the things that we find with people moving down, and you might think, I don't want to live in a tiny home. This is way too little space for me. You'll be surprised when if you're not living in a tropical environment now and you move to a tropical environment, you'll find that you want to be outdoors all the time. Every day is a beautiful day. I like to watch, I'm Canadian, I like to watch hockey, but I like to watch it outside, a TV on the deck. I don't like to we don't have great rooms or, those sorts of things that you need if you're in, Minnesota in the winter or something like that. You need space indoors. Well, here you don't. You can be outdoors. You use your bathroom, your kitchen, and your bedroom, basically, and the rest of the time, you kind of want to be outdoors. So even though these homes are small, they provide exactly what you need. So the Locino, these names of these homes are all named after Spanish horses to go along with the theme of the Spanish colonial ranch designs. So this one's a little bit bigger. It's 2 bedroom, 1 bath, $169,000 for it. And if you combine it with an Agro-Forest parcel to give you that 1-2 punch, it's $189,900. So I think these are really great specials. The reason I wanted to have this on with Vance and I doing this today is that, I know we kind of promoted it as a residency, and it definitely is a residency webinar, but because this is a great combination to combine with residency, I think it's worth mentioning. So this is the Locino plan. You get a bedroom with a king bed and one with either bunk beds, or you can make this an office or whatever you like. And again, very cool designs with the Spanish ranch look. Again, there's a lot more pictures of it in the brochures. This is a larger home. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. Normal price for the Paso Fino is $309.9, and if you combine it with Agro-Forestry, it's it would have been $353, but it's $329 combined with the Agro-Forestry. This is another beautiful home. You can see some of the interior renderings here, and there's 5, 6, 7. I can't remember exactly right now. Homes under construction at Playa Pacifica right now. They're due to be done or completed by late June, early July. So, we're going to have a couple model homes there as well, but it's a really good time to get into getting a home built there right now, because the construction crew is already there and going. If you add them now, we can kind of get rolling right away on your home as well. So this is the Paso Fino floor plan. Again, the master bedroom is a king bed, second bedroom is a queen bed, and you have your full kitchen and island and living space, a lot of airflow through. And again, this frontal area with all the glass that's facing the ocean. So you got beautiful views of the Pacific and the beach and everything, and you're literally a stone's throw. You could literally throw a stone to hit the beach from where you are. And the final one is a little bit larger, a 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath. It's called the Andalusian. The normal price is $399.9. Combined with Agro-Forestry would be $443, but we're doing the combo for $419. Again, this is a really beautiful home, kind of lengthwise towards the ocean. So every bedroom and the living area all have great views of the water, the ocean, and the beach. And again, you can see this it comes with a pool, and you have great decks in front there. You've got your kitchen, flow through area, 3 bedrooms, master bedroom with the king and the other 2 with queens. And like I said, they all come with the laundry rooms and the solar system rooms and all that sort of stuff. So I'll go through the amenities pretty quickly at Playa Pacifica. Like I said, Playa Pacifica is part of a greater sized. Grand Pacifica is actually 2,000 acres. It's huge. And Playa Pacifica is one of the neighborhoods within it. And you have access to all these amenities as an owner in Playa Pacifica. So there's a golf course. Right now it's 9 holes. The second 9 are cut, but I don't know when they'll be done. But you can play the 9 as 18. They have different tee areas. They got horseback. There's stables on site, so there's horses that you can ride. As I mentioned, the great surf breaks. There's a couple of restaurants in the area. There's a gym, yoga palapas. We have frisbee golf, which has gained a lot of popularity. We just added tennis courts. There's always been the infinity pools. That picture in the middle there is the infinity pool that's closest to the restaurant. Always beautiful sunsets. My friends and I usually have sunset picture taking combinations and sit there with a glass of wine and see who can get the best picture. It's always different. It's really beautiful. And there's a little small soccer pitch now, soccer field. Nice thing about Nicaragua, you might consider it not too eco-friendly, but you can ride things on the beach. So that's my wife in the side-by-side there on the beach. Would be a little ways down, about a mile north of Playa Pacifica. But it's a great swimming area. I don't surf. I tried it. I nearly broke my foot. So I boogie board, but it's a great swimming area. And a little further up is the bigger waves for surfing. So there's a good ROI anticipated with the Playa Pacifica. Now, when we do these ROI calculations, they're based on actual history. I've had condos and homes inside of Grand Pacifica for a decade. And so I took, my return on investment and applied it to the new homes that we're building now. So it's anticipated, it's not guaranteed, but it's, very likely given. I think we've been pretty conservative too. So we'd rather like people to be pleasantly surprised than not. And so we have a, an anticipated scenario and a, kind of the worst case conservative scenario, but, you can probably expect, 12% type of return on a rent. And that's pretty good, especially in today's market when, a lot of us are kind of pulling out of the stock market, not knowing where that's going in the next months or years. So, having something stable that's also a kind of a landing pad for you is, I think, a great investment. So that's it. I did get through it. I don't know, how long did we take? Well, almost an hour. I apologize. That was longer than it should have been, but hopefully you stuck with it and learned some things. And there's the email address that if you send an email to, Vance and I and our team will get it, and we will make sure that you get what you're asking for or answer any questions that we don't have the ability to answer today. Vance, do you want to go through the questions? Do you want me to, or?
Yeah, well, first, again, round of applause. Hopefully the mic's picking up the clapping. Thank you for the presentation. That was a really good job, and you managed to hold your own for damn near an hour. So good on you, Patrick. Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot to think about here. Everybody listening, watching this, put your questions in the chat, in the Q&A. There's 4 questions in there right now. I want to see closer to 10 real soon, because we're gonna knock out all of the questions. So anything you guys put in there, this is your chance to ask your questions. Yeah, I'm happy to kick off the questions. So the very first question is from an Adam Sampson, and he asked, just curious, why not Costa Rica? Why Nicaragua?
Well, interestingly enough, well, partly because of cost. I mean, you can get real estate and most other things for maybe about a third to a fifth of the cost as that it is in Costa Rica. And that does kind of go back to the point that Costa Rica marketed itself better, and it's more expensive because more people went there. And so, the more expats there, the higher the prices go. And that happened to Costa Rica already. And that hasn't, well, it's happening right now to Nicaragua. So the prices are definitely going up. But, I find, like I said, I love Costa Rica, and I don't mean to disrespect it at all, but I do find Nicaragua more authentic. Like if you go to Leon, it's, a very, it has the oldest cathedral in the Americas, even though Granada was the oldest city in the Americas. It also has a very cool and popular cathedral and different things to see. But I just find the cities and the countryside just more authentic. They don't have the Denny's and stuff like that yet, but they're getting more and more there, and that's coming. But it's a lot of it is just cost. You can get the same lifestyle, or you can get a better lifestyle for a lot less money. And
yeah, so you said probably 1/3 to 1/5 the price, Nicaragua.
A few months ago, or probably a year ago now. Anyway, a while ago, a year ago, let's call it. I did a comparison on quite a few different properties that were very similar, and they were all beachfront. So beachfront in Costa Rica and beachfront in Nicaragua. And at that time, it was kind of like 1/5. What you were paying, 150,000 for, you were paying, over 600,000 for in Costa Rica. So, but Nicaragua's catching up. So I don't want to make, it sound like it's going to always be inexpensive, but, the more popular it gets, the more expensive it's going to get. But because you're getting a very similar kind of, culture, and a very similar, people are friendly in both countries. They're both quite safe, very safe. If you compare them to US cities, they're extremely safe. And so, we're looking right now, actually, EcoVillages is looking at property in Costa Rica to do another community there. It's amazing that we haven't done one in Costa Rica yet, just because of its popularity. It's just, we've always been drawn to various places. But we will have a community in Costa Rica as well, but that's not there yet.
And to remind people, Patrick actually has these communities in other countries as well. There's one in Belize. They're working on one in Panama. I think there's a couple others, right? So there's communities in different places, but the Agro-Forestry is just in Nicaragua. And of course, there's a community in Nicaragua too. Before I take the next question, I also wanted to mention a couple downsides of Nicaragua, or sorry, a couple downsides of Costa Rica and why Nicaragua is better. Again, Costa Rica is like 3 times as expensive, but a couple more considerations. Costa Rica is a much longer path to citizenship. It's about 7 years of residency to citizenship compared to Nicaragua only being 2 years. So 2 versus 7. So that's definitely something to think about. And guys, 13 questions in the chat now. Very thankful for all the questions. I promise you we're going to answer all the questions, even the latest ones, the last ones. So continue to put questions in there. I'll keep cranking them out for sure.
Yeah, and we're always happy to answer them after, in emails as well, if you didn't think of one during the presentation. So,
but since this is being recorded, it's good to actually get some of these out of the way, because I bet a lot of people have similar questions. Okay, how far is the agroforest from the homes?
Well, the agroforest is really at the tip of the country, so it's about 2.5. And fortunately, they've really done a good job of creating the road all the way to about 5 miles from the agroforest. The last part gets a little rough in the rainy season, but it's about 3 hours, 2.5 hours from Managua to the agroforest. And then it's about 45 minutes to an hour from Managua to where the homes are, kind of straight west to the beach. So I guess between the homes, I would say driving from Playa Pacifica, I've done it numerous times. So it was about 2.5 hours. Now you could technically build a home on your agroforest parcel. It's fully titled, you own it, you can do whatever you want with it, but you would likely lose your reforestation certification, which is how you get the residency.
Okay. So maybe after people become citizens, they might want to do something with their half acre.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. And that question was from David Wood. Next question from an anonymous attendee. What is the average temperature on the Pacific coast?
It's warm. In Fahrenheit, you're going to be kind of in the low 90s during the day to the mid 70s at night. It's pretty consistent throughout the year. It gets more humid, obviously, during the green season, so it can feel a little warmer. You do get some spikes. March is their hottest month, so we just went through it. That's kind of the, well, Semana Santa, the Easter week is during that. That's a huge holiday down here. And everybody goes to the beach. And fortunately, it's sunny and hot always that week. But yeah, it's very consistent temperature wise. For people that don't like, really, you get acclimatized to it. When I was first going from Canada and I was, coming from a cold country, it would take me a month or so before I'd be like, oh, okay, now it's comfortable. Now I can spend time outside and not feel hot. For the first, few weeks, it's like, wow, this is warm. But you definitely do become acclimatized to it. And now it's the opposite. If I go back to Canada, I'm frozen all the time. Doesn't matter if it's August in the prairies, I'm still frozen.
Okay, another question from an anonymous attendee. Does Nicaragua have a good reputation for protecting private property rights, especially for foreigners? Yes,
it does. I mean, I kind of need to tell the story of the history, because there was this fear of land confiscation back in the 80s and 90s. And let me try to encapsulate the story of the history of Nicaragua as quickly as I can. Originally, there was a president called Somoza. He was very well liked and loved by the people, extremely popular. He sent his son to, I think, Yale or Harvard, to Ivy League school in the US. And of course, he met a lot of Americans there, had friends and buddies. And then when he came back to Nicaragua and became the next in line president, he wasn't popular. In fact, he wasn't popular at all. And he started taking land away from farmers and other people and giving it to his buddies from his Ivy League school. They didn't buy it, they didn't pay for it, they just took it, and he turned the title over to his American buddies. Well, as you can imagine, that didn't sit too well. And at one point, they took one of Ortega's family's pieces of our farm, and that kind of started the revolution back in the 70s. That's almost 40 or 50 years ago now, but that's kind of the genesis of what happened. So when Ortega eventually, I mean, I don't know if you all remember, depending on your age and what you spent, in American politics, but the Iran-Contras, they were using Nicaragua to send guns to Iran from the States, and that became a big thing, and all of our North got in trouble and all that sort of stuff. You can look up that history yourself, but it made Nicaragua kind of abused. And so when the revolution, kind of that whole Contra thing exploded into the news, the US just pulled out of Nicaragua and didn't need a war there anymore. Ortega got into power because he was the opposite side, right? He was fighting against that revolution. So when he became president, he took that land back from the buddies of Somoza and gave it back to the farmers that originally owned it. And of course, all those American buddies said, "Oh, they're confiscating land," and they made a big news stink about it. And that's the history of it. So since that time, there's never been any confiscation of land. And in fact, the government's extremely aware. I'm friends with some of the family members. They're very aware of how important the reputation of the country and tourism and everything is to the future of the economics of the country. So that just is not a thing. But, you can still Google it and find out the history of it from the past. But that's really that's not necessarily what you would hear on mainstream media on CNN or something like that. But that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a long-winded answer to the question there. But.
No, yeah. I've heard you tell the story in the past in a previous interview, and it's good context, just in terms of like why there was that reputation at one point in time, but it's not as relevant anymore. Okay, next question. How much time for the residency procedure, and do you need to visit during application?
So I don't want to promise the time right now. As I mentioned earlier, the residency has become, very popular. Like I said, I heard the stats of 30 times more popular than it was before COVID. So it's kind of overwhelmed the immigration department a bit. And also because they took away the ability to get residency through buying a home, it's also overwhelmed INAFOR, which is the reforestation department, which is what we apply, or we have a certification for, and how our clients are applying for their residency. So because of that, it's delayed things a bit. Like it's not a fast process. I'll be just honest with you anyway. I would expect, you should really, probably expect 6 months, 8 months to go through it. And it's not, it's not something that's going to happen in a couple of weeks. But I think it's worthwhile to kind of get into now. A lot of the countries, almost every other country I can think of, is really increasing their cost and their investment amount to get into it. Like Panama, when I came to Panama and got my residency here, it was put $5,000 in a bank account and you get your residency. Now you have to buy property if you're a friendly nations visa that you're applying for, which is a type of residency for countries that Panama considers friendly. It's $200,000 that you have to buy a property for. And if you're not in one of the friendly nations visa countries, then it's $300,000 going up to $500,000. So it's pretty expensive. Costa Rica, I believe, is $150,000 right now. And, all the other countries are moving in that direction. So I suspect, like, these countries talk and they see each other, what they're doing. So I suspect that Nicaragua is likely to increase its number in the future as well. But right now it's one, if not the least expensive ones to get.
Okay, thank you for that. Next question is from John Smith. Where can we find more info on residency? Does your company have a newsletter or articles?
Well, the best way, first of all, is to get our brochure, and then if you are interested, we can put you in touch with our residency and immigration lawyer. She speaks perfect English, great person. We worked with her for many years, and she's excruciatingly knowledgeable on all the questions that you could possibly ask, because she does this every day of her life. So happy to make that connection, if you're interested in going through with the residency.
Mm-hmm. So guys, send an email to my Latin life at ecovillages-life.com. And that's how you're going to get your brochure. That's how you're going to get in contact with the residency lawyer and make the investment and all that. So make sure to send an email to that address. And guys, keep asking your questions. John Smith says thank you in the chat. All right. Next question also from John Smith. How often does the government rethink citizenship requirements?
I guess unfortunately these days, all the governments are rethinking these pretty often. And, it's a fluid, moving world in the residency and citizenship by investment world. So it's hard to say, it could be a couple of years, it could be 6 months. I don't know, but they do look at it pretty often. It's a source of investment, and it's because it's becoming more popular. Obviously, if your number of people getting residency investment goes up by 3,000%, your logical next thing is I'm not asking enough for it, right? So I should up the price and maybe make it longer to get citizenship and all those sorts of things. Now you mentioned the 2 years, Vance. That's at the earliest. I mean, I would expect, you can apply then and you might not get it on the second year, but it depends on how kind of overwhelmed they are 2 years from now too, right? So.
Yeah, and I think there's ways to build ties and show that you're committed to the country, which will help an application.
One of the things I think I forgot to answer on the previous question was about do you have to come there for residency? Yeah, you have to be physically in the country. Well, you gather all the things for your residency, and we'd give you that list. You need a police check, a health check. Those things can actually be done inside the country in Nicaragua. If you want to apply with a spouse, then you have to have your marriage certificate and those sorts of things. So you gather all that sort of stuff, and once you're ready, you actually create an SA, which is a limited liability company is in Nicaragua, and that company buys the parcel, but we contract with you directly up front, and then when that company is ready, it gets the parcel, and you own the company, and that's your investment. That's just the way Nicaragua does it. They want it done through a corporation. So you get a corporation, and the corporation owns the parcel, and you own the corporation. But you do have to be there when you actually go into immigration office and you submit your application, you physically have to be there. And then when they get to it, they will call you and say, next week, Thursday, are you available for an interview? And they generally like those interviews to be live. They'll come to you wherever you are, but inside the country. They're not crazy about doing Zoom call interviews, and it could potentially affect your ability to get residency. So you kind of have to expect 2 visits to get your residency.
I think one benefit of working with yourselves is that there's also inspections related to the business, right? And you guys kind of take care of those business inspections.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that, I wish I'd known all this stuff when I got my residency, because I plodded through it without a lawyer or anything, trying to do it myself. And, your police checks and your medical checks have a 6-month expiry date. And so mine expired 2 or 3 times because it took me so long to get through all the hoops on my own. But now we know what we're doing. The lawyer definitely knows what they're doing. And, our farm caretakers and managers, the people, the immigration people will actually come out to the farm and say, yeah, okay, this is their parcel. This is a real business. There's real trees. There's people working here. That's one of the key things, right? We employ a lot of people at the farm. So they see, okay, this is actually helping the economy, creating jobs, and having people invest in the country. So that all helps a lot, right?
Okay, cool. Okay, next question, another non here. More info about the avocado ROI and ownership details. Will I be able to import avocado? Maybe he means export. Expected ROI, sales and business management automated?
Yeah, I'd rather answer a lot of those are kind of long answers. So if it's all right, first of all, I'd look at the ROI stuff that's in the brochure. It will probably answer quite a bit of that already. You'll see kind of annually what you can expect. And, and I'm happy to answer all those questions in emails or on a separate Zoom call or whatever as well. It would take a lot of time, I think, to do it here. And I noticed we have quite a few other questions yet too.
Okay.
I'm not trying to shirk the question. I just do a better job, I think, if I can.
Yeah. No, I know you don't want to guarantee particular returns or whatever, and people can look at the estimates in the brochure. Regarding the sales and business management automated question, so that's probably worth clarifying though, that the investor doesn't have to get involved in the business to any extent. You guys take care of all the sales, the management, the selling, whatever, and then people just get a passive return.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you're welcome. Like I said, it's your titled land. If you tell us, look, I don't want you involved anymore, I'm going to go pick my own avocados and export them myself. And, I'll trim the teak and everything. You're welcome to do that, but it's all included in the ROI. We charge a percentage of the return when there is a return. So you don't have to pay up front, not knowing what your return is going to be, and then hope. If the return isn't as good as we anticipate, well, we're not going to make as much either, because we get a percentage of it for doing the harvesting, for arranging all the exporting, arranging all that sort of stuff. And we may even look at creating our own wood mill on site, just because the value of the teak is higher if it's milled than if it's the raw logs. So there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that are really to your advantage. It is a passive way for you to get a return while having a farm without having to do the farm work.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. All right. Another question. Can you talk more about the path to citizenship?
Well, basically, I mean, you can probably help with this one too, Vance. But basically, most countries have some form of, when you apply for residency, you can ultimately you take that you've kind of proven you're a good resident for a few years, and then you can get the passport, which is the citizenship. So just to be clear, residency and citizenship are different. Residency gives you the ability to live in the country without having to leave. The citizenship is you can actually get a passport of that country.
Okay. And I believe what we get for the investment on the original application is a 5-year permanent residency. Exactly.
And then they want you to renew it and add 5 years to kind of make sure you still want it. But it is good for 5 years. And that's nice too, because in the next 5 years, like we talked about, a lot of these residencies are going to change in a lot of the countries. So it's good to kind of get in, and then you've got that under your belt.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. Do you have to keep the investment for the renewal after 5 years? Like, do you need to still have the parcel 5 years from now in order to continue or in order to renew successfully?
When you go to renew, it's a little bit complicated. When you go to renew, they want you to show that you are still actively involved with the country. So they want you to have shown 20% of investment again over that period of 5 years. Now, if you go with our maintenance and insurance package, that adds up to about $4,000 over those 5 years. So if you do that, you're already almost at the 20% reinvestment. But you could also sell your farm. I mean, as these parcels get closer to when the teak is harvested, they become more and more valuable, because the teak is you're close to when you're going to score on all that teak. Mm-hmm. So you're welcome to sell it at any point. But then when you want to renew your investment, you would have to come up with another investment to show that you're still involved in investing in the country. Right.
And of course, you can hopefully apply for citizenship before that. So this renewal is just one
right. Potential. Obviously, once you have the passport, you don't have to worry about all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Question from Quasi. If we are interested in the teak parcels, how often can we visit to check in on the investment if your team manages them?
You're welcome to stay there all the time if you like. I mean, like I said, sometimes during the rainy, I would use a 4x4 to get there in the rainy season. It can be, the road goes right along the beach, and the rain's hard and the tides come in, and sometimes the road gets washed out patches. So it's just for the last few miles. The rest is paved, but eventually they're going to get. There's a little town called El Rosario right beside the farm. And the government has said they're going to pave all the way to El Rosario, and that'll be nice. It'll be a lot easier. 20 years ago when I bought the farm, it was hours of pounding through horrific roads. So the fact that it's only a few miles that's not paved now is exciting for me. But I go there, often, and certainly welcome to go and see your land anytime you like.
That's awesome. You got a little parking lot. We can get the Starlink satellite, we'll chill, and
yeah,
we'll camp RV there.
Yeah, actually, it's surprising because it's right beside the Coseguina volcano, and the Coseguina volcano is a very popular destination for hiking. It's got a big natural lagoon, freshwater lagoon in the middle. It's very, very cool spot. So you do get people camping in there, and it's all a nature reserve. Like, if you buy into this agroforestry, you're owning a very small area of private land that's basically surrounded by the nature reserve of Coseguina on the back side of it, and then onto the northern side of it is a turtle hatching nature reserve, a peninsula of sand that's protected because thousands of giant sea turtles nest there every year. And we actually have a turtle sanctuary there that's seasonal, because this is the end of the season now. The turtles are done laying, but next fall we put it up again, and we protect, because the turtle, unfortunately, the turtle eggs are a delicacy in Nicaragua. So we protect them. We actually either find the eggs ourselves, or we buy them directly from the hueveros. That's the name of the egg hunters. And they'd rather sell them to us because, for a few reasons, we pay a little bit more. They don't have to take them all the way to the market to be sold to eat. And then they know that if we're protecting the eggs and hatching, and then we release the baby turtles, that their grandchildren might be able to still be collecting eggs in the future. So they're excited about that. And the statistics on it are not. I'm kind of a turtle fan, as you can figure out by now. But the statistics on it are that in the wild, only about 5% of the giant sea turtles survive because of predators, man, dogs, seagulls, all sorts of different kind of predators out there. But when they're protected till they hatch and then released, in a protected way, once they're in the water, the statistics show that over 95% of them survive. So it's a huge difference. And they're kind of like salmon. They always come back to the same beaches to lay their eggs. So depending on the turtle, the species that be somewhere between 12 and 20 years when they're mature, they live to be over 100 years old. And we had some leatherbacks the other day in the turtle sanctuary. I'm always excited about those because those are the world's largest sea turtle, and they can get to be over 1,100 pounds and like 7 to 8 feet in diameter. So pretty cool.
Epic. Yeah, it's a beautiful piece of land with just like right beside that volcano. Okay. Next question. I'm not sure if this one's about the tiny homes. I think it is, but apologies if already asked. If we want to come visit, can we rent any of the units for overnight, week-long stay? What are generally nightly, weekly rates? Understanding those change by house type.
Yeah, within the Grand Pacifica Resort, there's many homes or beachfront condos that you can rent. I would say they range from maybe $90 a night to whatever you want to pay for some of the mansions that are there. But I have a home there, a condo, 2-bedroom condo that I rent out, and obviously I'd be happy to connect you with it, give you a good deal. But there's lots available. It's a popular spot because it's close to the city, and yeah, it's worth going to see. The Playa Pacifica homes won't be rentable till this summer, but there's lots of other homes that are available for rent.
Okay, cool. Another question. How much time is required in the country if I want to make the investment for the residency? let's say I want to start now. What do I need to do?
Well, the good thing about the investment residency, which is different than the others, and people do tend to confuse them, is that on the, like, if you went ahead with a parcel purchase, you have to be there to apply, and you have to be there to, you more or less have to be there to do the interview. After that, there is currently no legal restriction on that. You have to be in the country for a certain amount of time. The lawyer recommends you come kind of like, you know, once a year type of thing at least, or, you know, just to show up and get your passport stamped so they realize that you're still interested. So when you, especially if you're later going to apply for citizenship or renew it, that you know, they'll go, oh, okay, well, you did spend some time here, that's nice. But if you're talking about the renters called the rentista, or the pensionado, which is the pensioners, those you have to be in the country for about half the year, 180 days of the year. And so if you're interested in being in the country and living there full time, there are other options. I still think the investment option is by far the best for many reasons, and it's taken most seriously. But if you go for the investment one right now, and I can't promise this will be forever, but right now they're saying there's not really a requirement to be in the country for a certain amount of time.
Okay, makes sense. So kind of pop in once a year or whatever, just to kind of keep it active.
And I think if you haven't been there, once you go there, you're going to love it anyway. So you're going to want to be there a lot.
Definitely a lot of good spots. In terms of what they need to do to start now, obviously send an email to mylatinlife@ecovillages-life.com. You're going to get the brochure. You're going to be able to talk to Andre and the team, get the process started, and start cracking away on the task to start. So send an email, guys. If you want to get started, please send an email.
Exactly. And once you decide to go ahead, we have a contract that you sign, and we put you in touch with the lawyer, and she walks you through each step. It's very, very detailed with her. She's really good at doing that. She explains things in very simple terms and makes it really easy, and does all the work for you, which is nice too.
I liked it. Okay. Another question. What percentage of the land has been sold so far? What percentage of the farm is currently available for sale?
Well, as of this morning, there was 46 out of 54 parcels sold. We have 54 parcels in the property. We're keeping some of the land for my family, so we decided to max out at 54 parcels. So there's 8, I believe, 7 or 8, depending on whether one sold today. Percentage wise, I guess what, that mid-80s.
I like it. We're going to try to get the rest of these plots gone as soon as possible, and then that's it, because it's like a cohesive unit of all the parcels are attached.
Yeah, I didn't have a map on here, I guess, but it's really you know, was it 27 acres of half-acre parcels, and they're like it's a, you know, rectangular rows of them, but they're you know, the closest ones are only 600 feet from the beach, I guess. So it's a bit of a cliff there, and that's a good thing, because the cliff protects the plants from the salt spray. You can't really grow them on a low bank beach, because it just gets, when the storms move in off the ocean, it blows a lot of salt over the land, and would kill avocado trees. So fortunately, we have the cliff there that protects against that, but it's still nice for humans. You can, you know, it's not very far to go to the beach.
That's pretty cool. That's very close to the beach.
Yeah, you can see on well, I can go back to, oh, hang on a second if I can. So you can see on there that at the bottom middle kind of area is the Cosaguina volcano, Volcan Cosaguina. El Rosario is the town there, and then the farm where the yellow arrow points. So this area, kind of where that arrow is about a 30 or 40 foot high cliff. So you can't really just walk straight down here. We've thought about putting a staircase along there for that, but you can also walk. The road comes back here, but you can walk along these properties. They're empty farms as well. And then the bank ends around here, just under El Rosario. And that, then this whole spit out here, this is that sand spit that I was talking about, a peninsula that goes into the Gulf, and that's all protected area of another nature reserve. That's for the turtles. And then all this kind of green area around the volcano, the darker green this is already farming over here, but this is all nature reserve. So the nature reserve is pretty close. You can literally go up this lane here, like with a horse or whatever, and go to the top of the volcano, the bowl of the volcano, and look down into the lagoon. There used to be a path down into the lagoon, but it seems to be overgrown now. I guess it's not got as many people going. Maybe during COVID or something, didn't have as many visitors.
Epic. I like the spot. I like the spot.
It is a beautiful spot.
Love it. So I guess that was all our questions, and that actually kind of works out well with this webinar capping off at about 90 minutes total. Patrick, how do we want to end this thing?
Well, I just noticed one question that I think we accidentally missed here, but didn't want to. Sometimes the tough questions, you still have to answer them. Adam says, when I went through the border recently, I think it was recently, they required a PCR test. And is that just to make dollars off of tourists? Yes, to some extent. But the history of that is when the president came out and basically said to the people, when COVID hit, right? Nobody knew exactly what was going on. Everybody was panicking about whether they should, wear masks or isolate or whatever, lock down the communities and everything. The president came out and said, you're not children. I'm not your parent. We're going to help you with the decisions. If you want to isolate your grandparents or something, we'll help you with that. But you can make your own decisions. We're not locking down the country. We're not shutting down our economy. Frankly, we can't afford to. So we're not going to. But he got a bit of backlash, well, not only from, UN and different parts of the world, different countries in the world, but also from their own people. Some of the people were like, hey, that's not great for us. We've got all these people coming into the country, potentially bringing COVID. And what about us? So what they did is they implemented requirement for the test at the border when you came into it. And unfortunately, I think that's still there. I know it's going to disappear any one of these days, but they kind of got off the hook from the pressure from their own people by saying, okay, how we're going to count, we're not going to change anything. We're not going to make you get vaccinated. We're not going to make you wear masks and that, but we are going to require people coming from outside the country to get a PCR test so that, that we can quote unquote protect our own people. So they've been a little bit reluctant to remove that even recently, just because they just went through an election and they didn't want to upset the apple cart during an election. So I suspect now that they're back in power again, that it probably will get rid of that. Hope so. That is kind of the one downside of it. But, PCR tests are easy to come by.
Yeah, that's fair. And, we'll let everyone know all of the requirements they'll need to enter the country, to do the residency program, the investment, et cetera. And if they do require that, maybe they won't require it anymore in a couple of months when paperwork's all done and it's time for people to show up in Nicaragua, get their photo taken, get that residency card.
You bet. Well, thanks, Vance. I think that's all the questions, and I really appreciate you having me on your program, and I really appreciate everybody that joined us. We had a good group on, several dozens of people at least, if not 100 or so, but there, it was a lot of people interested, and I understand why. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you, and please do send an email to that email address. I'll go back to the top here. I also had the address. 1 second, it's a little slow. There. So at the bottom of the screen, my Latin life at ecovillages-life.com. And happy to answer any of your questions and send you the brochures, and look forward to speaking with you.
Absolutely. Patrick, thank you so much again for walking us through this opportunity, specifically for the My Latin Life audience. So thank you to everyone that listened as well. And yeah, please send Patrick a message if you would like to invest and get started and work towards that that Nicaragua residency and citizenship.
Perfect. All right, guys, thank you very much. And I guess I'll end it here and I appreciate everybody joining. Bye-bye.
Cheers.